All right, and we are live. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the first
Hello.
attempt at Freedom Alternative interviews. It's probably going to be a semi failure because that's what happens at first attempt, but nevertheless, we're going to try. I'm here with Rishabh Sao from India, and Rishabh and myself have been planning this for what, 2 months now, something like that. And
A little over a month. A
uh,
little over a month.
a little over a month, okay. And we'll try to approach several controversial topics and piss some people off, maybe bringing some new information, the usual thing that you can
Yeah.
expect from Freedom Alternative.
That's what you do.
Yeah, also, I'm bragging with my new mic received as a donation from a subscriber. Thanks a lot for that. I haven't got time to buy a tripod for it because I received it this morning, but still, it is. I chose to use this one for the simple reason that there's a lot of noise outside, and at least this one doesn't capture that, and we can understand each other as human beings. So, Rishabh, tell to this audience a few things about yourself. I know it's not. Our domain to talk about ourselves. We usually leave that to narcissistic feminists, but nevertheless. So, go ahead.
So in India, we sort of define ourselves in terms of what is our qualification on paper, because here apparently nobody cares, who you are or how talented you are unless you have it on paper. So I am a qualified media and communications graduate. That's my bachelor's degree. Currently, I am preparing for civil services examinations in India. And when you're in India, you're competing against, like, a billion people for the exams. So you have to read everything under the sun. And because of that, I would say, not to brag like narcissistic feminist, but I would say that that has expanded my horizons a little bit. Because when they say that you have to read everything, you really have to read like everything: economics, science, religion, what have you. So that's my qualification, and this is my situation now. I'm also aiming for a master's in international relations. Although for that, even I have to compete against a billion people, so I'm not sure how is that gonna happen, but it's somehow gonna happen. So yeah, that's
I don't
just
know
me.
how to say good luck. Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
When it comes to, we don't know how good we have it here in Europe. I mean,
Oh, of course.
at best we have to compete with like what, 200 million people because half of the continent is very old. It doesn't compete with us, and then you have 100 million children. So we have to compete with around 200 million people continent wise, which is significantly better than what happens in India or in
No, I
China.
mean,
For that matter.
competition is everywhere. I mean, you want to go to work, you're gonna have to go through the worst kind of a crowd in the best connected metro railways in the world. It's one of the best connected metro railways in the world in Delhi, and Delhi is the second most populated city in like the whole goddamn world after Tokyo. Although the difference is that in Japan, everything else is unpopulated and only Tokyo is like extremely populated. In India, everything is populated, apart from Delhi being one of the major, cities, and it has one of the best connectivities in terms of traveling. But even so, when you are in the train, you will actually feel short of breath because you would be suffocating with the lack of the oxygen in the coach.
I cannot say I'm surprised. All right, then with that with that out of the way, let's get straight to our topic and let's start annoying people. So, Islamism versus feminism. Let's start with the semblances between the two. What are, in your view, the similarities between Islamism or Islam in general and feminism? Let's take the modern day feminism and then we'll go further back in history if it's needed.
I think both of the ideologies, because they are ideologies essentially, they're both poisonous to me on a personal level. And as an Indian, if you are a sort of an aware, thinking sort of a person, you would be noticing it right now. And shout out to all my Indian friends who are offended because it's the mangina capital of the world as well. It's definitely not the rape capital of the world, but it certainly is the mangina capital of the world.
More mangina than
So
Sweden?
oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Because we outnumber them, simply speaking. Uh, it's embossed in our culture, it's a part of our mythos. I mean, not saying that the worship of femininity is something wrong in terms of Indian civilizational terms, because we worship everything. But because of the fact that we worship everything, and with the coming of New Age feminism, that sort of got a newer sort of a bump and a rise. Incidentally, it were in India at least, it were the feminists that asked for this religious sort of approval, that don't can't you see it's in your faith. Because religion is very important in India, not in terms of how we relate to each other, in terms of how our differences are, but Hinduism is essentially, which is the largest faith, it's very inclusive in nature. So it's also formed a part of the Indian culture as a civilization. Now, because of that, what has happened is that feminists themselves, they demanded that they should be approved, in the annals of religion. And when they were, they said, it's the patriarchy, that you are approving us, and since then,
Quite depressing. But still, I mean, I find it funny that feminists wanted to be recognized as a religion, although it's
I mean,
at
not
least that's
recognize,
honest.
not as a religion though. I mean, to be approved by religion, in the sense that you look at us as something that is, you look at women in terms of something that is divine in the Indian faith, like that. So they asked for it, and when they got it, it's suddenly the narrative today in 2015 and 16 has been about, we are not goddesses, don't make us into goddesses, you go girl. And that we are human beings, etc. And you are over glorifying us, when in fact it were the feminists that wanted this sort of a religious inclusion into the system in the 80s, in the 70s. And well, so in terms of Islamism, I find similarities, because instead of faking the fact that it is a religion, it is in fact a religion. It makes no qualms about it. Islamism, though, is different from Islam. It's a complicated subject. Islam in India is very, how should I put it? It's very liberally interpreted today, frankly, because if they had got to live in this society, they had to deal with the situation, which meant that you either live like Hindus, which means including everybody into the fold, or you don't live with us at all. So they were here, most of them were converted people. And today, the narrative amongst the Muslim community in India is that they're all Uzbeks and Arabs and Afghans, anything but Indian. But their nationality seems to be Indian, but genetically they're not Indian. So that's an interesting observation
Is
as well.
that even true?
Of course not. In part, it is. I mean, you wouldn't say that 8 generations ago, somebody in your family came from Uzbekistan, so you're all Uzbeks. That's
Yeah,
stupid,
absolutely. Yeah,
right?
absolutely. You wouldn't say that.
But that's true in many cases, and I'm being, maybe I'm generalizing a little bit, but a lot of conversions that happened in the area which was open to the world of Islam, which is now modern day Pakistan. That part of the world was actually subjugated into accepting Islam. Today, the narrative, of course, is that people were invited into the fold of Islam, which is an interesting perspective. Incidentally, what a lot of people don't know, particularly in Europe, is that when you think of India and Pakistan in those terms, you think of a Hindu country and a Muslim country, but that is not true. India is a secular country, and Pakistan is a Islamic country. In fact, it is the first declared Islamic state. Very important to understand, because that is what we are talking about now.
In
Why?
the modern age,
Uh,
in the modern
in the
age,
modern age,
because
because
the
one
Ottoman
one of the
Empire.
worst mistakes. one of the worst mistakes that we make about Islam is to assume it to be purely barbaric in nature. It is not. Islamism is has I mean radical Islam has a lot of intellectual guidance in the background going on. There are associated books with it, there have been associated intellectuals with it, and the primary person who is responsible for the birth of radical Islam, as it were, that includes terror and hating the West and destroying everything in its way and going absolutely by the book. Okay, even going to the ends of reading something that occurred in the Quranic events, like killing of the Jews by the Prophet, into something that is allowed today just because the Prophet did it. Not that I think very highly of the Prophet, but that's how the events unfolded. Okay, but it's absolutely mind-boggling, because when you come to know who was behind it, it was actually an Indian. It was an Indian by the name of Maulana Abul Ala Maududi, and his books are still distributed in Delhi. Of course, Indians cannot read it, Indian Muslims can, which has always been the scare. And
What do you
yeah.
mean they can't read it?
Because of the fact that Indians follow a different script, which is an Indian script, which is called, because we are a classical civilization, so we have various kinds of Devanagari scripts. And Muslims in India, because of the perpetual Stockholm syndrome, follow the Perso-Arabic script, which is referred as Urdu. The language is called Urdu. The script itself is called Nastaliq. So that script is it looks Arabic. It's not. It's an Indian script, but it has been derived out of an Arabic sort of a system. So because of that, Indians can't read or understand it. I mean, Hindus at least, and in general, any other Indians, not just Hindus, who are not Muslim. This includes the turbaned people, the Sikhs, the Buddhists, the Jains, the major minorities in India that are not Muslims. The largest minority in India are the Muslims. They are 10% of the population. Interestingly, when the British left India, there was a demand for a separate country called Pakistan. Now, primarily the assumption is that, and this is, I'm talking in terms of the topic of Islamism that is under discussion, which is very critical to understanding Pakistan and what is happening in the Middle East today. Uh, Muslims did not want to live with Hindus at all. And the reason for that was that when the British had come, the Turkic invaders from modern day Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan founded an empire in India called the Mughal Empire that ran for around 8 to 900 years. With sometimes they captured all of North India, and in other parts, in other events of the history, they were quite limited around their area in the north. uh, but the point is that because of that system, what had happened was that the feudal society in India was primarily composed of Muslims. The feudal society also meant that the rich folks were Muslims. So these people, they did not want to live with the dirty, disgusting, idolatrous mushriks, the kafirs, the idol worshippers. So they asked for a separate country. Indians, the Indian party, the Indian Freedom Party, which is called the Congress Party, it's still there and it's still an important party, although it is rife with corruption today. It was very against the idea of a country called Pakistan, but the Muslim intellectuals wanted a different country because they could not live with us. And because of that, Pakistan was founded, which was a country of the feudal, by the feudal, and for the feudal. When India was founded, it was a secular country. We straight away went after the feudal lords, which were actually put in place by the British, and we dealt with them. And consequently, our economy progressed because we are a classical civilization. There's a way and a methodology to how we think. Pakistan, on the other hand, is a civilization, part of the same civilization, but it likes to pretend that it is Islamic because most of the people that live there are Muslims. And why are we talking about Pakistan? Because the idea of Pakistan was introduced by Maulana Maududi. Maulana is the the scholarly title that is used for Muslim clerics or imams in India and in South Asia. And I think in the
And
Ottoman Empire as well.
yeah, in the Ottoman Empire and the modern day Saudi
Yes.
Arabia
Yeah.
and
Yes. So Maulana was a very interesting fellow. His works are the invention or the new age birth of Islamism, and particularly something called the Islamic State. Pakistan is the Islamic State. It was the first Islamic country of the world. It was established in the year 1947. Before there was a revolution in Iran, Iran has been made into this big monster in the West that, Iran is the problem. Iran is not the problem. Iran is one of the problems. The real problem is Saudi Arabia and Pakistan and Egypt. Why? It is the unholy trinity of these three countries. Saudi Arabia is where it all originated. Okay. Pakistan is where it found these henchmen that would do the dirty work. Therefore, most of the terrorists, are trained in Pakistan, whether they are anywhere in the world, because it's the only place in the world that trains them. Why? Because the state supports the use of terror. And
yeah, it's
Egypt,
the only place you can actually do it without anyone seeing it. Yes.
would you believe that the Chinese terrorists, Muslim terrorists, are being trained in Pakistan as we speak?
Yes, I have read about even
Yeah,
the previous ones that have committed a massacre in China. I have read about that. Yeah, they had been trained
true.
in Pakistan. Yes.
But Chinese, interestingly, have a very good relationship with Pakistan because Chinese are the forever copycats. So, so in fact, you would not believe this is the official Chinese statement when the world asked, the UN asked that what is going on with you and Pakistan? Like, what's wrong with you? Why are you patronizing this nation? So they were like, you don't talk to us because China is our Israel. That's their statement, actual statement. It's the states saying. Because everything they want to copy America for, like everything, right from their products to how they function and everything. It's insane. And the reason for that was Pakistan was very clever. In I think in 48 or so there was the takeover of communist China by the takeover of China by the communists, and soon after the takeover, the Pakistani regime went to Mao and they stated, "Yes, sir, Taiwan is a part of China and it is not a separate country," and etc. So it first recognized Taiwan to be a part of the PRC. So since then, China has had a very good relationship with Pakistan. Now, Pakistan has a problem with India. It uses state-sponsored terrorism against India, right? And because of that, uh, China doesn't have to do anything to do with sponsoring terrorism. China and India just want a good relationship with each other, but China doesn't trust anybody. And China is frankly quite idiotic because it doesn't think outside its own shell of existence. Everybody around them has a problem with them. They threaten everybody instead of talking to everybody. And
In all fairness, they can afford not to think too much outside of shell of their existence. I mean,
well,
who
but
the hell is insane enough to attack China?
but then that is true for India as well. That is true for India as well. But we, in our own region, we exercise less of an iron fist, frankly, because we are a democracy and we're accountable for what we do than what, say, China does. I mean, you have goddamn amusement parks in China that still are hating on Japanese. Like they kill children go to the fucking amusement parks and they kill the Japanese. It's insane. I mean, come on. I mean, it's been like what, 70 years or so. Like, get over it, man. Like,
Well,
why?
the other mental asylum, the People's Republic of Korea, they haven't also forgotten about the Japanese occupation. People still talk quite a lot about that, and there's a lot of anti-Japanese sentiment in there as well.
That's
So, I mean,
that is
not
true for South Korea as well. And
to a
frankly,
lesser extent. I mean, you don't
to a
see
lesser extent. Again, yeah.
you don't see open calls for it's essentially death to Japan, death to America. That's what you see in North Korea quite often. In South Korea, I don't think so. It's not to that extent. Of course, there's still anti-Japanese sentiment, but it's not even remotely to the same extent.
No, it's there is this sort of an buried anger against Japan, but Japan has been trying its best to deal with it. Japan has been, like Germany, Japan has been going on and on apologizing with the nations that it subjugated. It even apologized to Thailand, which it didn't quite, invade, uh, all that much. And Japan, at the same time, is in a very weird position that it has to maintain a power structure along with the Korea, I mean South Korea. But PRC, definitely nothing goes in there, nothing goes outside it. Whatever is there has been frozen in time, and the hatred is still. And frankly, if you're poor, where are you going to guide the hatred? At somebody whom you cannot see.
All right. So from what you've said, I mean, I just realized that I just found a new argument of similarities between Islamism and feminism. At before this interview, when someone would ask me what are the similarities between Islamism and feminism, I would say, well, they're both gynocentric in different ways, but similarly
Mhm.
gynocentric. Now I found
Mhm.
a new argument from what you've just said. They're both focused towards division. Islamic scholar, the Islamist scholars in India, were focused towards division and eventually divided India and divided the world, including the Islamic
Exactly.
world overall.
Exactly.
Feminists, on the other hand, they're busy with dividing the world as well, just not along religious lines, but along sex lines. Uh, you know, if this were on AVFM's channel, I wouldn't have to say it. But since we're on my channel, please tell to the audience a thing or two about what the feminists are doing in India, particularly the 498A law and things of that nature. Please explain to
Oh
my
my
audience
God.
about that. I know where to start.
Where do I begin? I
Yeah.
mean, wow, it's just crazy. It's crazy, man. It really is. First thing that I'd say, and since a, a lot of people do watch your show, I'd just like to say that anything that you hear about India, that this is happening to women and that is happening to women, and in rural India or in urban India, and so got raped, that is outright bullshit, okay? That's nonsense. It is rife with feminist agenda everywhere, every step of the way. Any data that is collected and is sent to the UN or anywhere, it is done by feminist organizations. The state has legitimized feminist organizations, giving them special committees. I mean, from USSR, you can understand what a committee is, right? You establish a separate committee. So that is a socialist hangover. It is a liberal country today. It's a mixed economy, but either way, that thing is there. And the committees actually, so we are in the Indian men's movement. There is a sort of a demand for starting a men's committee, because that's a very interesting way to go, because if it is possible, it can be done, that it will provide a central structure to the men's movement as well. On the other hand, there is, for every state in India, there is a separate state committee for women, then there is a national committee for women, and they all sort of culminate, okay, and cross over in this one city, which is the capital of India, which is the most political city of the world, I mean of South Asia, even if you're factoring in Pakistan, because frankly there are many parties here, many different ideas, and feminists have a lot of power, not direct but indirect power in India, to the extent that in the parliament you cannot raise a bill for making a gender neutral law without being scared for your life, and without the media painting you as this misogynistic idiot who doesn't know any better, and the next day you'll know that your constituency and the people are angry, and the next elections you're going to lose. You actually risk your seat in the parliament if you speak out against the feminists. So they are against neutral law. They are against anything that will give even a monicum of happiness to men. There has been historical explanation for it, but in the modern world today, it's just very
So
untrue.
So this is
What?
probably why most of the public positions taken against the feminist establishment have always come from courts outside of anti-feminist organizations. But if an official said something bad about feminists or about false allegations or things of that
Oh
nature,
yes.
it was always a
Offi-
court official, a judge,
yeah, yeah.
who I suppose is less afraid for his or her seat.
No, they all
As opposed to the
they're
government.
afraid. In India, they are. Of course, they are.
Are the judges
Uh,
elected or appointed?
uh, Judges are appointed. But even so, they're scared because the media in India is very strong, and that is how you get to hear about these things. You never hear about who got raped in Saudi Arabia, do you?
No.
You don't hear about any data that is collected in Saudi Arabia.
Speaking of Saudi Arabia, what we do get to hear is that
Hmm.
every time a woman is beheaded, which happens once or twice a year,
Oh
we
yes.
we get a European media scandal about it. And last time this happened, it was actually a woman who had raped and killed her daughter. Yet for some reason, the Independent and the Guardian thought it was a good thing to tell us all how bad Saudi Arabia is because it beheads child molesters and killers. And
Because it was a woman. It was a
yeah,
woman, right?
because it
But
was a
but
woman.
very interestingly, again, the similarities between Islamism and feminism, they come into light here. So what's the big scandal? Every time I hear there's a beheading in legal beheading in Saudi Arabia, what the fuck are you so, surprised about, you fucking idiots? There's a square in the middle of Riyadh. It's called Dira Square. The legal beheadings are carried out over there.
Yeah,
The punishment, the death penalty is beheading in Saudi Arabia. What's the goddamn like surprise there, you idiots? Like,
yeah,
what's I mean,
it's like pushing news that China has been carrying out executions by shooting behind the inmate's head. Well,
sure,
it's their standard operating procedure.
it's a
I'm
standard
not
operating procedure.
I'm not saying it's a good procedure or it is a good idea to have death
Hmm.
penalty. I'm not a fan of death penalty because if I can't trust the government to count the people in the country, I definitely don't trust the government to kill the right people. But nevertheless, it's
but,
their
but
country.
yeah,
Who the hell am I to question it?
no,
Uh,
that's
what I
you
am,
should question.
yeah,
You
I
should
should,
question.
but only in theory. What I do question a lot more is when they import their culture here. That's when I
Mhm.
question a lot more because I don't want to see
No,
legal beheadings in the streets of Berlin, for instance, or
I'll give you
stoning
I'll
executions.
give you another interesting perspective on this. I mean, why shouldn't you question? India is a democratic country, and all the opinions, whether it be anywhere in the world or be it domestically in India, they're all welcome. We are not China. We welcome everybody, and and we've welcomed so many people that we are 1.6 billion now. But the point is that I'd like to say is that see in India death penalty is important, and the reason for that is again Islamism. If you don't put the fear of God inside the heart of the terrorists, that they will be killed, their families will be harassed for life by the police, then they will go on and on and on doing it because we have 10% of Muslim population in India. There have been reactions against Islamism in the past, which have then been used by the Islamists against the Indians.
Here's another
So
similarity with feminism. Let's play victim ad
yeah,
nauseum.
let's play victim. So a bomb goes off somewhere, okay, that leads to a Hindu society which is largely a tolerant society, okay. It breeds a lot of intolerance. It leads to a rise of a very weird, twisted kind of a right wing which does not even recognize itself as a right wing because in Indian culture, right wing is not allowed in a sense, because the whole point of Hinduism is to think whatever you want, feel whatever you want, and interpret however you want. But apparently, there was a particular Hindu right wing that came into power in the 80s because of the sort of the anger that the people had against how Muslims had been operating, and certain politicians definitely took advantage of that, which is what is happening in Myanmar. Interestingly, with the Buddhists today, it's a flashback into the 90s of India. Anyways, that's a different topic. But basically, you incite people first, then you play the victim. Okay, then when you bomb other people, then you say that you know what, this was because of the fact that you did that to us, and then we said that but you did that to us first, It doesn't matter, that's too much in the past, why are you invoking that? That's basically the general narrative in India.
Yeah, that sounds
Playing
pretty much
the
like feminists who then
that's
who
yeah.
then complain. You know, when a judge in India, for instance, says, "Okay, enough with the nonsense. There's been too many false allegations under 498A. Too many
Mhm.
families have been harassed because potato, and there's nothing to this case,
Yeah.
or to this case, or to this case, or to the last 1,000 cases.
Mhm.
Maybe,
Mhm.
just maybe, it's time to change the law and make it more friendly." And more, I don't know, in line with the basic principles of due process. And then feminists come in and don't write on Indian outlets; they write on the Guardian that, oh my God, that judge wants to oppress all Indian women, and then they throw in some bullshit statistics, usually completely false, or if
False.
or when they're not false, they're completely misleading. For instance, I was watching accidentally, I was in a bar, I was waiting for someone, and it was on, I think it was on Discovery Channel. It was a documentary
Mhm.
about India. And you know, at one moment the narrator says that in 2011 there were like 45 million abortions of girls in India. And I'm like, okay, I understand India is a big country, but 45 million a year just specifically on girls, that just sounds a bit too much. So, you know, I went online and I was like, okay, let's see, maybe it's legit. And it
Mhm.
turns out
It's
that
not.
the source of the statistic was something like the Committee of Women of whatever,
Yeah, yeah.
which is a half NGO, half state agency that just happens to have an incentive to report as big numbers as possible to get more
But
funding.
Lucian, can I tell you something?
Please
The
do.
Indian law, the in 2011, if you're saying this, the Indian law has mandated it for the population that it is illegal to find out the gender of your child before it is born in India. Do you know that? So how the fuck did they come with that number? That is very interesting because if there is no legal way to find out that so many women, so many girl children were born, then how can you decide that they were murdered? Interesting, no?
Well, I guess they asked those who have done it illegally, and well, if they did that, then why the
They
hell
can't
did
do that. They can't do that because India is a huge country. And how are you going to collect all that data? It's probably a falsified number. And frankly, who's going to say that I did something illegal? They'll go to the jail. And let me tell you, India is a very, very gynocentric country. You will not just go to jail, your whole life will be destroyed once you go to jail in India. Also, for the benefit of all our viewers, I'd just like to state what 498A is and certain laws that make India sound so regressive when you collect data. So 498A is part of the Indian Penal Code, which is the punishment for any crimes that are committed in the Indian legal system. It's codified in one single book, which is called the Indian Penal Code or the IPC. 498A is a clause in the IPC, which is a law specifically for dowry. And according to Indian law, dowry is illegal. Now, anybody who's found guilty of taking dowry uh, will not just be arrested themselves. Like, say, I am the groom and I have asked for dowry. It's not just I who will be arrested, it's my parents, it's my family. Dogs and little infants have also been reported to be arrested and put behind the bars.
dogs?
Okay?
Really? I mean, I've heard of infants, 2 months old infants, but dogs?
Dogs. Dogs.
Jesus Christ.
Interestingly, they've been put behind bars in the lockup, in the police lockup, not the prison itself, but in the lockup. But of course, somebody is definitely going to the jail as well. And basically, it's something very, very self contradictory because we are noticing a number of cases which may amount to a majority of the cases. By some accounts, it is even said that 97% of the cases of dowry in India are false. But if you go by the data that so many dowry cases were reported, then that means that India is a deeply regressive country and it is taking dowry from their girl children. Very interesting. Another perspective is something called 375 and 376, which are the rape laws. It is codified in the Indian legal system that he who rapes, he meaning the male, meaning the female cannot rape.
Of
There
course,
is no
we
recognition.
all know that women are angels. I mean, there's no way
They're
a woman
angels, of
can
course.
do that. Now, what I wanted to ask is that
Hmm.
under Islam and under family law in Islam, the Sharia law, there is such thing called mahru or mehriye, which is essentially dowry. Uh,
Hmm.
how is the judicial system? If you say there's 10% Muslim population, that definitely at least 1 or 2% practices mehriye. It's just impossible not to. Uh,
You would
how
you
is
would
the
be
legal
surprised.
system? How is the legal system dealing with that?
It is a very, very interesting question, and you'll be surprised with the answer. So, in order to stabilize this country, which obviously contain 10% of the Muslims, well, Muslims want Sharia, like they love Sharia. Doesn't matter it came from the desert, they want the Sharia. Doesn't matter it came 1400 years ago, no, Sharia all the way. But what is interesting about it is that in India we don't have a single legal system, right? We have two legal systems, one to deal with non-Muslims, and the other to deal with Muslims.
Britain,
It's
are you
called,
listening?
yes, I am.
No,
Oh,
Britain, the British followers, are you listening? This is your future.
yes, yes. This was their solution. This was the British solution, by the way. They came up with it. they this is what surprises me, that Britain can't think of it now. Now that it's in your doorstep. Why don't you have the bifurcated solution for yourself, assholes?
Well,
You
actually,
know?
actually, they do. There is already such thing called Sharia courts in Britain. For
Yes, yes,
now,
they do.
they only deal with some family matters. They're still quite limited in their area of reach. But yeah, it's actually slowly being implemented into Britain as well.
So there are two law codes in India in terms of dealing with some cases that are important and that are often intervened by religious interests, such as marriage, such as dowry, very important, and other things. I mean, the general day-to-day things, burial, for example, things like that. Basically, how you live your life as a person has been divided in India into one Hindu and one Muslim. We didn't ask for it, Muslims asked for it, and Muslims got it because we wanted a stable political establishment in India. Since the British named it, the British came up with the idea. They called it the Muhammadan Civil Law Code. Okay, because obviously anything that has got to do with the adversary of Christ and Christianity, Christian, has to be Muhammadan. In Islam, of course, Muhammad is not the more important person. The more important person of interest, let's just say, is God. Of course, God is not a person in Islam as well. He's an idea. It's an abstract idea, but whatever. The point is this: that in India we have a Hindu law code, and we have a Muslim law code. The Muslim law code is predominantly based on Sharia. This has caused a lot of problems in the past as well, including a prime minister trying to deal with the situation so badly that it started a question in Indian legal system that led Indian Muslim feminists, and I don't mean the fake feminists of the West that wear the hijab, right? These are Muslim women of Muslim heritage that are very left in their orientation, and they are feminists. They started, and they are also part of the Indian parliament. They started asking questions that whether this difference, in terms of having a Muslim legal code and a Hindu legal code, is all that interesting or not. I can't remember the name of the case. You can look it up if you want. It caused a great deal of controversy, even challenging the administration of that particular Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi. He almost, in the 80s, he almost lost. He almost lost his what do you call his position of power, and because of that he did something very interesting, which repercussions of which we are still facing today, which is what the Islamists use to justify today, is that Indian history is rife with Muslim invasions, and they're destroying various temples and constructing mosques and things over it. One such site of controversy, and nobody has been able to decide it, whether what it was. There have been archaeological studies conducted on the area, but archaeologists are really scared to really publish their real findings because they
You don't
don't
want to
know.
offend the religion of peace. You definitely
Right.
don't do that.
One, and certain right-wing groups in Hinduism are also very vested in that area. Not all, they don't have popular support in India. Majority of the people do not support, but they are very powerful politically. They've gotten inside the system. This happened because of the secular Prime Minister of India, Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi. Now, because of the fact that it shook this feminist case, where the dowry issue came up, that there was this old woman who was asking for dowry with his husband, and she was a Muslim woman. Now, in the legal code in India, those things are divided. Hindus, obviously, because we are open minded, so we shall pay for it. But since Muslims can afford not to be open minded, till that time, according to Sharia, by some technicality, the husband refused to pay. So this raised a question. And eventually, the feminists wanted that this woman should get the alimony from the husband. Okay. Because she was claiming that he has taken dowry, so I should be given alimony. Do you understand? So,
Yeah, but it
so
doesn't
she
make sense from a Sharia perspective because in Sharia, it's women who get dowry. I mean, they're promised
put
actually.
yourself, my brother, put yourself in a suspended state of disbelief. You are in India right now. Okay, feminists are at play here. Okay, it doesn't make sense. Of course, it does not. She demanded alimony because in Sharia, of course, alimony is not allowed, right?
No, there's
Um
a different form of alimony that is agreed upon before marriage, and
before marriage
it's called
before
media.
marriage
Yes.
yeah, Mary. And so she asked for alimony, that this person should give me alimony. I'm old, I have so many children. So the man said, go fuck yourself. And the Indian establishment was like, what do we do now? This is a problem. She's raising the issue with the feminists now. Oh shit, they are in the parliament. What the fuck are we going to do? So then there was a lot of legal proceedings, and I'm doing the Indian head bob just to denote how important it was. But but there were a lot of legal proceedings. It went through the Supreme Court of India. Ultimately, the Supreme Court of India, fearing for the fact that they might offend the religion of peace, agreed upon the fact that she is demanding it, against the law. It is against Sharia, and it is against the Muslim legal code, and we are not going to do it.
So they
This pissed
upholded
off.
the separation instead of forcing the unification.
Yeah,
That's what
so
you're
this
trying to say.
pissed very interestingly, this pissed off the feminists, the Islamic feminists, and the secular feminists as well, because this became a huge national issue in the 80s. But on the other hand, it also pissed off. It also made the Islamic clerics delighted in India, because yes, it was a victory. And you see, people talk about a day when Islamism will be doing a face off against feminism. It has already happened in India, and when it does happen in the West, trust me, Islam is going to win. Their propaganda is so strong. They are everywhere in a open and a culturally accepting society, a culture which takes everything from the outside. The Greeks came to India and invaded us. We took the Greek heritage in our, and we've mixed it so much inside our culture that you won't be able to find the head or tail of it. We still have the Roman Greco style of wrestling in northern parts of India and Punjab. Right. That kind of a culture was challenged by Islam, and that culture lost. A classical civilization lost against an ideology, because it catches hold of your collar, it bullies you into submission, it shames you, it will do whatever, but it will have its way.
Yeah, well, Islam is at the end of the day means submission, so I'm not particularly surprised. It's interesting that you mentioned the Islamic feminists, and I'm going to share with you and see what you do with it. What I've learned from an Iranian fella named Ali Mehrashpan.
Mhm.
He told me that there is such thing, and I googled it and read quite a few websites in in Persian with a friend of mine who speaks Persian, because I don't trust Google Translate because they
Yeah.
always miscalculate whatever. Anyway,
Hmm.
so there is such thing as Islamic feminists within the Iranian parliament, and what you'll see in Iran, and I want you to say if this is the same happening in your area. What you see in Iran is you see Islamic feminists complaining about the niqab, for instance. In Iran they have the niqab, which is semi-mandatory, not the burqa or the abaya as in Saudi Arabia. The niqab, which is a lot more liberal of the three. So they complain about the mandate to wear niqab, even though the religious police cannot actually enforce it. So it's usually older women who enforce it upon younger women. So it's nothing to do with patriarchy. It's just
Yes, true,
uh,
true, true.
I'm not surprised at all. The amount of feminist stupidity and lies about the Islamic culture is uh,
There's a lot
over 90%.
of Islamic stupidity also involved. There's a lot
Absolutely.
of yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. So what I was trying to say is that they would whine in the parliament that they're we're being forced to wear niqab. On the other hand, when a more liberal member of the Iranian parliament raised the issue of either putting a cap or even dealing away altogether with the concept of marié in the Iranian family law, guess who was the main opponent to that idea? That's
The
right,
feminists.
the Islamic feminists. Yes.
Hmm.
So that when I hear Westerners saying that Islam feminism in the West is a cancer, true, it is. But if there's a place that needs feminism, it's the Middle East. I don't think so.
Exactly.
I think nobody needs feminism.
That's like saying that communism is required by Afghanistan. Look how that turned out. Yeah, that's stupid. Those
And
things have
even
been
Russia
tried.
would disagree with that.
You. But see, the interesting thing about that is, again, Iran is a very interesting thing to understand. Now, Iran was not an Islamic society, as you know, we've had this discussion online. Iran was a great civilization on it. So it's a white culture, predominantly, it's an Aryan culture. And why I say this is because Europeans and Indians are basically the same people, cousins separated over a very long period of time, and the link that is between us, that is the people of Iran. Iran itself, the word itself comes from the word Aryan. Okay, and when I say Aryan, I don't mean the Nazi interpretation of Aryan. What I mean is Aryan actually stands. It's a very very ancient term, which is where Hitler picked it from, along with the swastika. You can find its mention in the Sanskrits, which are the ancient holy texts of India. In the Sanskrit texts of India, where Aryan is repeatedly used interchangeably for describing a person or a people that are a, civilized, and B, noble. That would be the best description for them. Iran definitely fits into those criteria, ethnically speaking. It had its own great culture, it had its own religion. When you see the film 300, uh, when you see the Persian king, that's not a Muslim king, that's a Zoroastrian king,
Zoroastrian,
right?
yes.
Zoroastrian king, and he was definitely not as androgynous and Brazilian looking as he was portrayed in the film. So the Zoroastrian kings were responsible for a lot of civilizational achievement that happened in Iran. Because of this, Iran always felt a little ousted even when Islam came to Iran. And Islam didn't come to Iran by peaceful means, like every Muslim will tell you, not just Iran, for the whole world, that Islam is the religion of peace. By the way, the biggest bullshit lie about Islam being the religion of peace is also nonsense. You know why? The origin of the word Islam does not mean peace. It means submission.
Submission, yes.
And it is often confused by the origin of another word in Arabic, which is called salam, which means uh,
Greeting.
peace, which means peace. But the complication now that the Muslims have introduced is that the origin of Islam, the word Islam, comes from the word for submission, which in turn comes from the word for peace.
Yeah, that's a
You-
nice way of muddying the waters
yeah,
and
yeah, exactly.
and
And
preventing clear thinking. It's
that's
another
what Muslims
tactic.
do.
and it's another tactic that we can see in feminism as well. So for instance, when I say to a
Mhm.
feminist, look, you're offended that in Iran women are being forced to wear the niqab. Fabulous. Go argue with
Mhm.
the older women of Iran who harass young girls on the street to wear niqab. And
Mhm.
then the retort from feminists is, oh, but that's patriarchy in action. And then comes some progressive toss to
That
justify
that
that.
is that is just a very weak and unacademic and unscholarly argument. That is definitely something which is really
Well, you,
stupid.
you cannot spell
Um,
feminism without unscholarly, so there's
Yeah,
that.
of course. All of it is fake. I mean, it's a maze of bullshit and lies. Either way. I'd just like to bring some cultural context in terms of Iran, because I've been reading extensively quite recently. Of Iran is very important for Indian history as well, because we have a lot of Persian poetry in India. We have a grand tradition of it. On the other hand, we also protected a religion that escaped after the massacres that took place in Iran, which were the Zoroastrians. And the few tiny Zoroastrians that came to India, they literally became what the Ashkenazi Jews were for Europe. Okay, they were clever in the start, they were just trying to survive, and let's say that they did the most unglorious of things possible. They even colluded with the British sometimes. But when there was an actualization that we are part of this culture that has protected us for such a long time, they became some of the biggest heroes. One of the biggest conglomerates in India, which now owns Jaguar and Land Rover, is an Indian Zoroastrian company by the name of Tata. Okay, some of the biggest businessmen in India are are Zoroastrians. They have been soldiers. They have been the most celebrated chief of army staff, who could have well created an army coup in India, but they never did. Instead, they looked for a stabilization of the army in a region where almost all the countries have had so many military coups that it's you cannot count them on your finger. Look at Thailand; it has like a military coup every year because it has
Pretty
become a
much.
constitutional aid, and all the other countries in Pakistan repeated military coups, then in Sri Lanka almost, but it didn't quite happen, but there was definitely an attempt. All the way they went all the way. Then in Bangladesh, military coup. I mean, everywhere it's happened everywhere. There were attempts in Nepal. It didn't transpire into but it was a long time ago. But it really never happened in India, and no attempts were made, because these people, the Zoroastrian chief of army staff, which is a celebrated hero, because he's the post independence chief of army staff in India after 47, he had the charge of modernizing. What did he have to do, with India? you know but this was a person who was thankful. This is the civilization that was destroyed in Iran, that 0.06% of the Zoroastrian population in India has contributed so much that a lot of the economy that is attributed to the world class macroeconomics that are present in India today, and the trade machinery, it's all contributed to the Zoroastrians, of what we call in India as Parsis, because they came from
Yeah.
Faras or Paras, so Persia. So, and the biggest Indian stock exchange, that's a Zoroastrian establishment. The entire city of Mumbai, which is the trade capital of India, that's all Zoroastrians. How? Because these people were thankful, and this was the great civilization that you destroyed. Now,
And
because of this,
not only thankful, but also free enough to
free
actually
enough, actually
explore.
do.
Yeah, to actually explore their knowledge and put it into practice, which is no longer the case in the Islamic Republic of Iran, sadly.
Very true. In fact, in Iran, Zoroastrians are still being persecuted as we speak, and they are not treated nicely. The IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, which is the army that is instated in Iran to protect the religion of the
Yes,
nation.
yes, and
Okay.
from what I'm hearing from my
Yeah.
Iranian friends who are breaking the law to speak with me on
Yeah.
Skype,
Yeah.
and what
Yeah.
I'm reading from several very few Western journalists who have the
Mm.
courage to go there and at least print some truth, is that
Mhm.
the Islamic Republic, as it is now, doesn't really
Mhm.
have the support of the masses, which doesn't surprise me at all.
No, I was just getting to the point. I mean, the thing got very long, but what I was trying to say is that one very short point here is that IRGC actually trains where the graves of Zoroastrians are. So they don't stop firing when they're burying their dead. It's that, unsympathetic. And of course, they have been marginalized, and there have been many, sort of legal, things working against them, that they lose their religion as quick as possible and things like that. But again, let's not go into that. So culturally, if you notice the people of Iran, and if you see the people of Saudi Arabia, you'll see a key difference is that they don't wear the face veil, which is called the niqab, right, which we have been talking about. For the reason for that is, Iran is a Shia country and Saudi Arabia is a
It's
Sunni
a Sunni.
country.
Yeah. Well, it's Sunni Wahhabi, but whatever.
Yes, Sunni Wahhabi. Now, I mean, Wahhabism really started as a cult, and then it was so important, and it was so, likable to the Arabic mind, that it became the Islam of Saudi Arabia. This happened in 17th century, and this is the kind of brand of Islam which is responsible for the terror today. Anyway, so in Iran, of course. Shias were the persecuted lot from the very start of Islam. Because of this, the Shia cleric establishment in Iran, particularly, it established itself like they are some form of a social justice warriors, in the past, when they didn't used to be a thing, right? Like they will. That is why there is an Iranian religious revolution. Okay, only under a Shia system could that have happened, because Shias themselves, they see themselves as, the under,
Perpetual underclass.
yeah, the underclass, the underdogs, if you will, and they are fighting against the Sunnis, and they are stupid, and they are trying to impose. So this is why the Khomeinis, or the Iranian clerics, they have established themselves as, or established in the past themselves as people who will fight for the rights of people. This was the entire base of the 1979 revolution in Iran, where clearly the Western ways were apparently imposing upon not just the clerics of Islam in Iran, but the common people. See, this is what I'm saying. The common people don't want to gel with the rest of the world. They have a problem. Okay. Now, if you put the niqab, that in the Iranian context, if you cover your face, that is the highest order of, going against the social justice warrior sort of the narrative of the Shia clericy. Do you get it?
Yes,
But
yeah.
in yeah, but in Sunni Wahhabi Saudi Arabia, that is not true. Now we have to go to the text of the Quran. In Quran, there is no mention of you covering your body as a woman by various kinds of clothes. It is just said that you dress modestly
Modestly.
and you
Yes.
cover all parts of your body. That's it.
Yeah,
The abaya,
the abaya thing is part of the hadith more than the Quran
yeah,
itself.
hadith, but then hadith is an interpretation of what the Arab culture is. Right now, I'll get to that
Pretty
point as
much,
well.
yes.
Yeah. So the abaya, which is the long robe that they wear, the hijab, which is the scarf, and the niqab, which is the face covering. Okay, the face veil. These are three parts of the veil, of the total veil. These are all Arabic in nature, because in the desert, when the sand flies, you, of course, you cover your face. So in that culture, it makes sense. This is how the hadiths interpreted dressing modestly to be. Right. But the problem with the hadiths was they came later, but Islam had traveled far and wide based on the sword or whatever their own politics to Iran, even. Right. These hadiths came later. Because of this, Shias do not tend to accept certain hadiths, and Sunnis accept certain hadiths. But there is a consensus in the combined in the unified Islamic establishment that you cannot confirm the legitimacy of any hadith, because they have come later and they are interpretations of other Islamic clerics and scholars. But herein lies the contradiction. Even though you cannot confirm the legitimacy of what has been said in those hadiths, whether it be how to beat your wife, that you have to beat her under, because it's in the Arabic context, it's a very humane way to do it, that you don't beat her on the face. Any part below the face you can beat her with a stick, you have to beat her. Nothing that hits her, nothing sharp, things like that. It's just so
Seems
outdated and
legit.
antiquated. Exactly. So those things are in the hadith, right? Now, because of that, even though you cannot confirm the legitimacy of all these bullshit things that are there in the hadith, and trust me, there is bullshit in the life of Muhammad also, which is a separate book, okay, and the Quran, which is his revelations, which frankly, every time there was some political problem, he magically got a revelation from the God.
How
And
convenient.
very conveniently, and every time he got a revelation from God, apparently it is said that his body shuddered, and he would sweat, and it would be like he has walked a million miles and things of that nature, blah blah blah. But you know who the source for this information is, that every time he got the revelation his body would be taxed? That's Muhammad himself. He said it, that my body shudders. In a room, when he's sitting, he's writing, his body shudders, or not writing, but he's thinking of making this stuff up. Do you know that in Islam, why is Jesus considered a prophet? Do you know this?
No, I
You
don't.
won't know this.
No, I
Oh,
don't.
very, very interesting. I must say this, that everybody should listen to this. So, when the Quraysh, which was the tribe of the Prophet, who were against the Prophet, because he was trying to establish a new cult, in the Arabic paganism of monotheism. Okay, not too different from what Zoroastrianism became, but he sort of followed the Abrahamic faith. Again, I'm complicated a bit. Let me let me clear it out. Let me straighten it. Yes. So Muhammad and Quraysh had a battle with each other, right? Now the Quraysh were his own tribe. They were opposed to the idea of Islam, that was his religion that he had come up with. Okay. Now the thing is, because of the political situation, which was at best between it was a very political religion, by the way, Islam. Nothing to do with peace, everything to do with violence from the very start, from the time of Prophet Muhammad. The political tensions were very high between the Quraysh and the Prophet. So the Prophet was kicked out by the Quraysh from Mecca. And from there, he was not sent, but he found refuge in what is modern day Ethiopia, the kingdom of Habasha. And if you would know from history, and if you know Christianity, you would know that Ethiopia is one of the oldest countries to harbor Christianity. Now you have to also factor in that Islam came 1,000 years later after Christianity did. So rest assured, we can say that 1,000 years is a very long time for a religion, a monotheistic religion, to establish itself. Ethiopia, in Ethiopia, Christianity was very much part of the Christian culture. It was always there. It still is. It is still a Christian majority country. They pride themselves. So the black people, very interesting point, and I'll go back to this. Black people of Ethiopia gave the Prophet refuge. Now, the Quraysh, which were trade wise and politically very, very influential in the Arabic trade post areas, very, very influential politically, they sent out a message to the king, the king of Habasha, or the king of Ethiopia, that dude, what the fuck? We kicked these guys out. Why are you harboring them? Okay, this is not good, and this will certainly not be good for business. And if you harbor this guy, you best deal with the consequences. So the king, he was in his own right, he had his own army, he didn't bother with the grandstanding of the Arabs that they did anyway. And they still don't, very interestingly. So the Ethiopian king, I forget his name, he asked the Prophet, okay, that why should I let you stay? You know, then suddenly the great prophet got a magical revelation
Oh, so he said
in
he
which,
recognizes Jesus in order to save his ass.
yes,
There
and
you
he
go.
says, he
Seems
recites
legit.
a narrative. He recites a verse from the Quran, which by the way has not been written yet, because the prophet cannot write. Okay, so whatever he's saying is the Quran, and all the other people around him are recording it. with the word of mouth, because Arabs were illiterate people. Maybe there was some person writing it, but we know for fact that it was written, at least Quran was written 200 years to 300 years after the prophet died. Okay, so while
Similar
he was in the
story with the Bible. Anyway, go
with
ahead.
the Bible. Anyway, so the prophet got this magical revelation in Ethiopia where he recited a verse from the Quran, and everything that he says is the Quran, because Quran is the word
Because
of
potato.
God. Because potato. And the fact that it is not like Bible contains stories, various books. It is also chronological. Quran is just, again, the relationship between feminism, communism, and Islamism. Quran is that book of quotes which the prophet said, and which is accepted as the word of God. What does it remind me of? Mao's little red book, which is the book of quotes. The power flows out of the barrel of a gun,
Well,
which
come
is the
on.
holy book.
It's still the third or the fourth most sold book. Now, admittedly,
Exactly.
99% of its
I,
customers
I had a
are
copy of it. I had a copy of it when I was a full blown communist idiot. But so I understand them very well, I do.
Yeah,
So
speaking
the,
of that, we're going to speak about communism in a further episode somewhere down the line. By the way, I also have a copy of the Red Book. Of course, I do. I have a lot of commie literature. Uh, yeah, we said we're going to stay on live for 1 hour. We've been from 1 hour for 1 hour and 5 minutes, so I think we should probably prepare to end this. So, what did we learn today? We learned actually three resemblances between Islamism and feminism, and a few of their foes. What we didn't get to learn is about their thought process, so we might need a second part about that.
sure.
Where if there is if there is any semblance between the thought process of a feminist and the thought process of an Islamist. Now, Rishabh has alluded to the fact that the Shia Muslims established themselves as the social justice warriors of their time. So there you go, some semblance of the thought process. But I guess we're gonna have to enter into that in a future edition, which will probably be somewhere during February. Yes, we intend to speak a lot with each other live, and you're all going to watch
I
and enjoy it. Go ahead.
I'm suggesting a material here for anybody who is referring to these videos, and also for you. You can, to understand Islam a little better, with all its nonsense and all its stupidity, and you have to watch a very, very pro documentary series for Islam, so that you can see through its bullshit as well. The documentary series is called The Life of Muhammad. It's a three-part series. It is available in YouTube. It is hosted by Rage Omar, who is a very well established Al Jazeera but news
Yes,
anchor, and then
I have
later
seen the first part, and I have the second and the third on schedule to watch them
I would
somewhere in
suggest.
2016.
Yes, so I would suggest that you please do watch the first and the second and the third part of it, because that will give you a complete picture. Very interesting, and you can actually see through their stupidity. I mean, it's not that different from Christianity or communism or feminism. It's just so
Yeah, it's
if
a
you are
very good
going to.
suggestion. Just like I suggested in my video, 6 things that Islamocritics get wrong. If we don't understand our philosophical opponents, there is no way we can efficiently combat them.
Very true.
So yeah,
It's You're definitely not going to win a war by just bombing them, because you bombed Al Qaeda, right?
yep, yep.
Then there was ISIS. You're
Yeah,
gonna bomb.
then there
You're
still
gonna
is
bomb.
ISIS.
There still is ISIS, and then you're gonna bomb ISIS, and then there's going to be somebody else. You have to philosophically understand them and defeat them in the battle of the minds. It's
Yep.
here.
Yep, yep, yep. And besides, given that there are so many Muslims in Europe now, even if we do stop the influx, which we sort of started doing, although it's still very slow, even if we do that, and even if we deport all the illegals, there will still be at least 10, 15 Muslims, 15 million Muslims within the European Union alone, not to mention other parts of Europe, such as Bosnia or Ukraine, that are not in the European Union. These people were going to have to be conquered, philosophically speaking. And in doing so, we need to understand their philosophy. I know it's hard for the Islamocritics to hear that, but we still have to do it. And this is one of the big purposes of this series of interviews, because Rishabh is uh, better documented than I am on Islam, although I'm quite documented in comparison to your average Islamo
European.
critic. I mean, I'm still
Hmm.
appalled of the amount of stupidity that goes in through the Islamo critic community. Uh, Many Islamo critics are just willing to believe pretty much anything, and that's a problem.
That's definitely something like militant atheism,
Yes,
that
yes,
it's just not right. You have to be very academic and very well informed in your approach if you're going to battle somebody philosophically. You
yep,
are not going to battle idiots with more idiocy. That's
pretty much.
just you being an idiot.
Yeah,
Anyway,
it works. There's a reason the expression is fight fire with fire, but not
fire.
fight idiots with idiocy, because it doesn't. Anyway, it's been a great pleasure to have you here, Rishab. And for everyone else out there, stay around this channel. I'm going to make some announcements after this video in a few hours when I tape it. And yeah, this week was going to be slightly slower than the last week. It's going to be probably another 3 videos besides this one this week. So yeah. And with that being said, thank you for coming, Rishab, and see you all on Freedom Alternative interviews next time.